Hello and welcome to Fandemonium, where a bunch of nerds just group together and talk about nerd shit. I am your host, Storm, and joining me we have the conqueror of all things, Lightning, and His Majesty the Queen, Bez.
I take it. I'm not even mad. That means I have eminent domain powers. You know what that means, right?
No, I'm a nerd. I'm not smart.
Oh,
You have domain over everything that I have not conquered.
fair enough. I mean, I'll make that deal.
So, today's topic is the topic of adaptations. We are seeing a lot of in film lately, and I just wanted us to take a moment and talk about the ones we thought were good, the ones we thought were bad, and what, in our opinion, makes for a good adaptation. Would either of you guys like to start this off, or should I?
I'm good to not start.
I think we should might as well just address what I think have been like the most notable adaptations in recent years. So probably something like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings that comes to mind. Those have been probably the biggest notable adaptations in recent years.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, well, there's also Twilight.
We are not. We are not talking about that shit.
I mean, I'm just going to say straight up, I haven't read the books, I haven't watched the movies, I have no desire to see either, so I really can't talk shit about it.
Likewise.
Well, I read like the first half of the first book. That's what I read.
You're a braver man than me.
Let's start off with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Harry Potter is the only one of the two.
Let's pick one.
Yeah.
I'd say Harry Potter because I never saw Lord of the Rings.
On the off chance no one has read the Harry Potter films, basically, orphan kid discovers he's a wizard, goes to school filled with other wizards and witches, finds out he's the chosen one, and has to kill the Dark Lord Voldemort. And it takes him 7 books to do it.
Right.
That is the most accurate summary I could possibly give.
There you go.
No, yeah, I mean, even the movies, I only watched up to the 4th one. I keep meaning to sit down and watch 5 through 7. But for what I remember, because don't get me wrong, the books were exquisite. Like, I truly trumpet those books. I think what stands out to me was in the 3rd one, Prisoner of Azkaban, right? If I may, I don't mean to cut anyone off.
Go ahead.
In Prisoner of Azkaban, like spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't read the books. Just throwing that out there. Hit mute. Yada yada. There's that scene where Harry realized he time traveled, and like he's watching what's that called? The Death Eater.
The Dementors.
Dementors, those creepy motherfuckers. He realizes the Dementors are after him, not after his father, and he bursts out and yells "Expecto Patronum," right? And what happens is the camera focuses on his wand. It gets really rapidly. There's like a really, really nice way to capture the tension going on. Because I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but when I was reading that scene in the book, I was shitting myself. I'm like, what? So like, I thought that was a really neat way of sort of like visually showing sort of how intense it was, and a lot of, because like that's the sort of thing in the book that isn't the dialogue, that's the background. And a lot of times when they adapt books to film, they frequently like don't acknowledge things that either aren't dialogue or just blunt settings. You know what I'm saying? So like I thought that was just a really nice touch. Like I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's how I interpreted it.
Historically, I think the 3rd movie actually has often been the most criticized out of all the ones in the series. Yeah, because this was So there was kind of a pattern in the directors. Like the first 2 were directed by the same person, then like the 5th or 6th one to the end was directed by the same person. The 3rd film was directed just by one director, just a one-time director for the series. His name was Alfonso Cuarón. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's a fancy Spaniard name, but it was. I still remember this when it came out at the time. Is that he received a huge amount of criticism for the way he directed the film, just in terms of like the style of it compared to the 2 previous films.
Yeah, he didn't necessarily keep visual continuity with like the layout of Hogwarts and the shift to a darker tone. Some people felt that the tonal shift was a bit too early, like they should have done the shift in 4 since that's when Voldemort returned.
Yeah. One other thing that doesn't help is that I think this was where the original actor who played Dumbledore, Richard Harris, I believe it was, he died. And so this was where they had to introduce the new guy, Michael Gambon, to take up the role of Dumbledore. So, just added pressure on his shoulders, I guess. They needed to, impress everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I'll throw it out there that, I think that since I would say that Prisoner of Azkaban is nowhere near as dark as Goblet of Fire was. I would say it was sort of a, putting your toes in the water sort of deal. I could see why they didn't
Yeah.
make it as dark, but they still made it dark because, otherwise it'd be like you'd had the first three films and everything's great, and then you hit the fourth film and all of a sudden everyone's dying. It's like, wait, what? Like there needs to be like that transition period. So you know what I'm saying? You got to ease them into it,
I can see that.
But like I was alluding to before, I thought that even though the approach was changed for this film, I liked it pretty well. Did you guys? How did you guys feel about this adaptation? And did you think it was the worst one in the series? I'd ask.
No, I don't believe the third one was the worst. I feel Goblet of Fire may have been in that. Not saying that they didn't do their damnedest to adapt the book, but it's kind of had the same issue as Deathly Hallows, where it was a very long book. They only had so much screen time to squeeze it all into. From what I heard, behind the scenes, they actually considered splitting up Goblet of Fire into 2 books, but they decided not to. And the Goblet of Fire was a pretty long book, but they had to skip quite a bit, like condense quite a bit of backstory or not show enough.
I don't know. You have to bear with me. It's been a while since I've seen the first 4 films, and I actually never got past the first 4 films because I think at the time my excuse was if I had to watch that Lady Umbridge on screen, I might sort of start having a seizure with rage. Because which also points again to Miss Rowling, the most irritating character ever. No, I guess my interpretation, I would have to say probably the second one. And out of the 4, again, I know my opinion's limited, but out of the 4 I saw, I'd say the second one is my least favorite. Because to me, it seems like the first one, which I go for, I understand, I support to be a lot more wholesome, a lot more cheerful, seemed to just stay that way. Whereas the second one sort of bounced back and forth. You know what I'm saying? Like from 12-year-olds having fun to, this creepy chamber with snakes and shit. And it's like, and the book can get away with that because it's the book. The book has unlimited, as long as there's trees, it has unlimited paper to take as much time as it wants. So I get the the advantages on the reading side, but it seems like whoever was in charge of at least adapting, so it seems like I'd say both the director and the writer seem to sort of struggle with overshooting. You know what I mean? Like they would go. It was almost like they were trying to steer a car that kept swerving. Like they went too far goofy, so then they made it really dark and then went back again. And so it was clear they couldn't decide, and then that just made sort of for a half-cooked situation because they couldn't get comfortable. And as a result, it was just sort of off-putting and a smidge weird. You know what I'm saying? And I felt like, if they had decided to stay full jolly, or even if they decided to be happy with a sprinkle of sprinkle of dark, that'd be fine too. And like I said, I really like the third film for its gradual descent into darkness, So I think they jumped the gun, so to speak, on the going dark. But I will give them points for realizing they did that and then made this third film what I think they were trying to do with the second. Descend into the darkness to sound like an edgy emo band.
Although points for them for not making the basilisk nothing but a CG mess. They actually had a practical basilisk prop in there.
At least for me, I definitely noticed something like that.
I actually didn't notice the tunnel ship Whiplash in second, though it has been a long time since I've seen the second film.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that one too, but I definitely noticed that the third one did the gradual transition a lot better than the second one did.
Yeah,
I would definitely agree with that. Storm, since you've also seen all 7 or 8 of them, which one did you think was the best one?
The best? Well, let's define the best. The best film or the best adaptation?
Best adaptation.
I think the first one was the most loyal adaptation.
Okay.
In that it was a much shorter book than say its successors, and it just felt very warm. It felt like a very welcoming entry into this franchise. A film you could show anyone.
I guess the question I would ask is do you guys feel like the best adaptation is necessarily the one that stays closest to the book? Could one adaptation be better than another by changing something?
Yes, I would agree.
To fit film better.
I was actually going to touch on this later, but I feel the most crucial thing to keep in an adaptation is the spirit of whatever you're adapting. Minor changes is depending can go without any issue, so long as you keep the core emotion of whatever it is you're adapting. Because one adaptation that I'm hoping to touch on later, that I'm sure I'm the only one who's seen, actually went condensed throughout and put quite a bit of things, but it's still a very good adaptation in my eyes because it keeps true to the spirit of of the material it's adapting from.
I think, don't get me wrong, I agree with you completely. But I think the one thing, this is going to be a bit odd, but I think the one thing that more films, that's important for when films, at least in adapting books, I think it's the one thing to always remember that most films don't do, and I get why they don't, is to be willing to shift things around from the book, if you know what I mean. Because if I may, frequently, right, don't get me wrong, movies change shit around, but they never adapt what they're doing. They never move the book, you know what I mean? They move themselves around the book. They never move the book around themselves. And I think people are afraid to take reasonable leeway, reasonable creative decisions in adjusting, whether it be a small part of the narrative or a small part of the structure. I think they're trying, in my opinion, frequently, and I give them points for at least trying to be, faithful, and I respect that, I really do. But there has to, few people, or a few directors, at least specifically, are ever capable of doing the balance act, being faithful and loyal whilst acknowledging the shortcomings, because there's only
specific examples you're thinking of with this?
Well, number one is actually doing it well.
With this?
For the positive, I was thinking The Martian. Martian, I'm halfway through the book. I need to pick it back up because it fell again through the cracks. Yeah. But The Martian, there were certain parts in The Martian book that, again, no disrespect, excellent book. It took longer because there was more time, you know what I'm saying? But the way Ridley Scott, whom I also love, his method of boiling down was shortening the length of some points in the book, but it's not only to serve the benefit of the film in terms of timing, but he also presented it in a good manner. Sort of at that point where he's building the garden, in the book, that takes a while. And I don't mean a while, maybe a couple pages, but that's still 5-10 minutes, you know what I'm saying? And in the film, it's 15-20 seconds. But the way it does it, that complements the film as a whole, No, and so as a result, I'd say that's when essentially meeting halfway. You know what I'm saying? Too frequently, people steamroll over the book. So, for example, if I may, Percy Jackson, A Lightning Thief. Boy. Well, I'm just throwing it out there. It's the one on top of my head.
Oh boy!
And I won't talk about it long. But it's we're talking about the spirit, the tone of the book. That seemed to me like the person who was trying to mold the film, trying to move the book around the film, went way too far. You know what I'm saying?
It was the same director as the Harry Potter movies, the first two.
Which one? Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I believe.
What the hell? Dude, having read the original Percy Jackson book and watching the film, I and the Harry Potter films in question, I just can't believe that.
I love
surprising.
The Percy Jackson movies. Let me just quickly confirm this. Christopher Columbus, who also directed Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets.
Colonizing America.
Jesus.
Where
did it all go wrong?
My first thought when I saw that in the trailer was, oh no, please don't be just like another Harry Potter film. Let this film be its own thing. I came out of that theater, what the fuck was that film?
Dude, what happened to him? Because, I'm not saying the first two are perfect, but they were pretty good adaptations,
They were pretty loyal.
I wonder if he just, after getting kicked off the franchise, he just, he started, going heavy into smoking cigarettes, drinking and stuff, just where did my life go all wrong?
Well, this being produced by 4 individual people who may have had something to do with it. Okay. More mouths shouting to do this.
More cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah. Also, the screenplay writer was...
Who was it?
Oh, God, no. The guy who wrote the Scooby-Doo movie.
Oh! All right, I think we found the culprit. I'm less blaming of that director. Let's be fair. When you're handed what this guy probably wrote, it's like, what are you
I
supposed
hear
to
you,
do with
know.
it, man?
There's only so
Yeah.
much
How
we
much
can do
option?
with the damn thing. I feel you. It's like, basically, let me see, produce screenplay.
Yeah.
And wait, what? The guy's on Agents of Shield too? What? Who let him in the office? Who let him in the office? Well, I mean,
He's got his fingers in
oh
all the
yeah,
cookie
and Sheep
jars.
by the Dozen and Manatee. Oh my god.
This is a very back and forth resume. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. What's going on? Like, it's like Nicolas Cage is either really good or really
We have
bad.
found the Nicolas Cage of screenwriting.
I'm not sure whether to like applaud or to vomit.
I choose to cry.
That is a good
The
option.
fact that
I
he
will
keeps
join
getting
you.
work, I'd be impressed because I'm convinced he knows the Jedi mind trick or something, to keep.
Who
getting
is
all
he
these
sleeping
jobs.
with?
Yep. Oh,
But-
man.
Right.
I guess if we've all read and watched Percy Jackson, you want to talk about that a little more?
Oh yeah. I
Um,
have.
yeah.
This would be therapeutic for me, seeing as I absolutely adored those books.
Mm-hmm.
I
I read them like
No,
a little
absolutely.
older than you guys probably did. Like I read them like in the last 6 or 7 years, but I definitely enjoyed them.
I started reading them when I was in high school, actually.
Okay.
So I was just a little above the age demographic, I think.
Yeah.
And I just continued to read them. I actually just picked up the Mark of Athena book. No, wait, House of Hades. I just finished Mark of Athena, part of the newer series that probably concluded by now. But I love the Percy Jackson books because I start off, oh hey, the main protagonist has dyslexia and ADHD, like me, cool. And I was like really into Greek mythology just as I was getting into this book, so I was already hungry for more of that stuff. And the book structured itself very much like a Greek myth, having smaller encounters along the way to its bigger mission, almost as if they stumble upon these encounters. And the film just did not acknowledge like its Greek mythical format at all.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
No, absolutely.
it just sort of butchered the characters. Like,
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
child actors are hard to work with, I get that, but wow, they aged up these guys a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, no, I mean, no, I'm with you. And I mean, the thing was for me is, mind you, I turned off the first film like 40 minutes into it, and I was on an airplane, so I'd rather just look out the window than watch a movie at that point. And it was like, I guess for me, what the film never understand. Now, mind you, I've read there's like, don't get me wrong, there's all those carbon clones of Harry Potter that came out, like in the first, couple of years after it came out. And so far, Percy Jackson's the only one I actually like because it has its own identity.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, the way, at least in my opinion, those 5 books, which I read, I tore through them. I loved them. It was that it all came across sort of as the kids themselves were sort of the common man. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
seeing through all this, mighty Olympian, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, these are like actual people going, wait a minute, I don't want the world to end.
Mm-hmm.
And I also really dug the transition of, like, modern Greek gods. I think the writer did a great job. The author did a great job on that.
Good, yeah.
So, watching all of, like, in my opinion, the best way I could summarize it is it was good-natured. There was a good spirit to it, Like, there was an actual sort of, let's do this gung-ho vibe throughout the whole books.
Yeah.
That just seemed like, what the hell just happened on screen?
Yeah.
What the hell is
Yeah,
this?
you're
And
lucky that you
what's
had the
going
luxury
on?
of turning it off. I was in the theater, so it's like
I'm sorry. Well, you could have got. I'm sorry.
Same.
That's,
I walked out. Yeah.
No, I have the mentality of always finish what you start.
Yeah.
you're better than me. I give it like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then if I've made it to minute 40, but I'm struggling to do so, I just up and leave.
I think you're a
And I
wiser
go
man
and I get my
than
money
me.
back.
But
Yeah. Well, I also tap
Lightning,
out.
what was your feeling on the film?
Yeah. I think all of us are kind of in agreement that there's not much to defend with this film. It's I think this is going to be us ripping to shreds slowly. So, just it's been a while since I watched this piece of crap, but I've off the top of my head, the biggest thing that stands out to me was how some individual scenes were treated. Like the casino scene where the Jade Lotus Casino, something like that, I think it was called. Just slap Lady Gaga over it, have them just play in a high roller poker area that's clearly only for 21. Just all this crap that really ruins the mythological feel they had building. They throw this like modern slap on it. It was such a jarring transition to me.
Yeah. Also, with the way some of the gods presented themselves, like Hermes, Ares, Aphrodite, them modernizing seemed like fine. Yeah, of course they would, but Hades,
it's like I forget who the actor was. I remember I liked him, but
I'm checking. Okay,
Google
Stephen Coogan.
Steve Coogan?
Okay.
Yeah, Steve Coogan.
What? Yeah. Holy shit!
He played Hades.
Well, there's your problem right there. No offense, Mr. Coogan.
Here's the thing, though, is that I think he could do it, maybe, but it's like you can't present the character itself like this.
Yeah.
Being like the big, mighty lord of the underworld, you can't have him just like show up as just like this regular-looking guy, and that's kind of what they did.
I think the problem is the people who produced this movie saw the movie Hercules, saw Hades, and thought, oh, he has to be a comedic villain.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, Hades should be treated with a lot more respect.
Absolutely agreed.
Motherfucking Hades. He ain't got to have flames out of his skull with burning eyes. He's got to have respect for him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's got to walk in the room and you got to feel inclined to not, pull his pants down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I don't blame Steve Coogan for this. I blame the way that his character was written for it.
Absolutely.
One of the decisions that I keep looking back to is fucking Heath Ledger as the Joker. I would have never expected going into that film that he could pull it off. With his past resume, and Steve Coogan, I think if his character was written in a better direction, he could have pulled it off.
Absolutely. No, that's why I said no doubt no offense to Mr. Coogan.
Yeah.
The thing is with Steve Coogan, I'm with you. I think with good writing and with a director who could understand how to present it that way, I think he could be like a good imposing figure.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But it was clear that they just slapped Steve Coogan into it. And that's why, again, I love him. He's funny as hell. Mm-hmm. But that's why it's just saying, all right, Steve Coogan, you're Hades. That's like, wait a minute, what? Yeah. And, the reason it, now that you mentioned how Heath Ledger's, background, you wouldn't have, understandably, no one saw this coming of the Joker being so obscenely good. If Steve Coogan had done it right, it might have, allowed more comedic actors to be allowed to experiment. You know what I'm saying? Not typecast and put in that box. And, Steve Coogan, again, not his fault. Unfortunately, I think that may have, if not permanently, severely hindered his path towards, more dramatic performance. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Just to touch on real quick, another area I think they failed with the characters was Grover. I thought that, he was...
I agree.
I don't know necessarily about how he was cast, but definitely poorly written as a character, It's terrible transition.
The problem is he was the only enjoyable facet in the cast.
He was. He became a decent comic relief character, but it's like that's not what he was... not in the way that he was supposed to be,
Yeah. Here's something else with the casting. They hired, 17-year-olds to play roles meant for, 12-year-olds.
13, yeah.
So these are 17-year-old characters trying to solve problems that 12-year-olds are supposed to be having difficulties with. When you're that old, you shouldn't have an issue with it. I'm not referring to the actor's age. I'm referring to the characters that have been aged up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of a reputation that I guess Hollywood in general has had with casting, older teenagers to play these younger teenagers. I think the only instance I can remember them casting actors that were appropriate age for the characters is Harry Potter and also what's it called? Ender's Game. They casted the kids appropriately as 11 or 12-year-olds. But in every other instance, whenever it's that 11 to 14 young teenager age, they always bump it up to 18 to 20,
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in the production of Civil War, that's actually one of the reasons they went with Tom Holland, was because he was 19, which meant they could have actual filming hours, because under that, you're restricted by child labor laws.
Yeah.
So as a result, at some points, don't get me wrong, I agree with you completely, but sometimes it just boils down to sheer logistics, Either we can make this film for $50 million in 12 weeks, or it can make this film for 132 million over the course of 4 months. And it's like, well, problem solved itself. We're not doing that.
I get what you're saying, but I also look at some older films, something like Goonies or something, where they have younger children actors that are like maybe like 8 to 12, something like that range. And you know, I feel like in certain situations they're willing to go that extra mile to get the right child actors, but it's just,
well, no, absolutely.
There seems to be plenty of times where they're not willing to. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, and then the question is like, you know, what would entice them, you know, to go that route willingly? You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I mean, there's a ton of factors, but you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm with you 1,000%, and I mean, it's all also, if I may say, like, it's also a lot about physical appearance too. You know, not to be a shallow, materialistic, you know, looks are everything. But for example, take Superbad. Jonah Hill as Seth. Besides being funny as hell, at the time of filming, he was 27. He was 27 years old. I'm fully serious.
Holy shit, I didn't know that.
27 years old.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's 17.
Yep.
And he looks at it, he acts like it, he even walks like it.
I actually heard that shaving was a huge issue behind Seth because he grew facial hair so rapidly.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you should see that guy with the beard, like he's huge. And so as a result, like, you know, I always keep that in mind because, you know, this is a very, you know, important discussion that must happen behind the scenes before they even do a production.
Don't get me wrong. If an actor looks like they can be a younger age, then that's fine. My issue was when they aged up the character.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Aging up the character itself to suit the narrative, like, you've already lost.
Like, in some instances, I can imagine you can get away with it, but when you're, like, in your adolescence or, like, being aged up from 11 to 14 or 16, that's a huge age gap.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Like, and you, like, the same problems that an 11-year-old would address are vastly different to a 14 or 16-year-old.
1,000%, absolutely. And like that's why, like, I strongly say, like, you know, if you, and unless done either really well or because you have to, adjusting the character's age in order to bumping up the character's age to suit like your plot of an adapted story, you've lost. That's it. Like, you've lost. That's it. Game over. Because the characters are what holds the plot up. They're what move the plot. And it's like, you know, when you start messing with that, the plot starts getting shaky and wobbly.
Absolutely.
And as a result, it starts getting uneven. It starts getting messy. And on top of all that, you start readjusting stuff. You've just basically lost. You might as well make like an original movie.
You actually made me think of something, Bez. What happens when you take an adaptation, but instead of openly taking it and going with its story, you take it and use it as a springboard to make your own story? Like in the case of Blade Runner, where it went from Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and made it into Blade Runner, where they openly advertised it as loosely based off the book.
Yeah. Oh, I don't mind that. Like, when they say loosely based off, that's okay to me. Because, like, you know what? Okay, that's fine, you know. And it's like, if you say that off the bat, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you say it off the bat and everyone's starting pre-productions on board with the whole loose adaptation, Godspeed. You know, that grants you so much more freedom of movement, and I say go for it. But when you're trying to market yourself as a straight adaptation, but then you start doing the sort of stuff you do with a loose adaptation, that's where it's game over.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
It comes down to
oil
the name
and water
as well, you know? It's like, when you name it Blade Runner, it's clear from the outset that it's not meant to be some direct adaptation of the Android's Dream of Electric Sheep book, you know?
Absolutely. No, title is everything. I mean, that alone is a huge, you know, statement.
Yeah.
That alone.
It makes people go into expectations. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. And, you know, it not only is it makes their expectations change accordingly, I'd say, which is the important part. That's why I say titles are like everything. You know, it basically is handing you a pair of glasses, you know, to look at it from a certain lens via the title. And, you know, you come into, you know, Percy Jackson with the Dame Percy Jackson, and I'm like, oh, sick, dude, this is going to be dope.
Yeah.
And then I leave 40 minutes in going, and turn it off, and I'm just like, well, that was not dope.
It was also not Percy Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it wasn't Percy Jackson. That's the thing.
It wasn't at all like the book. And then I got stuck with my cousin at a family reunion who was insistent on watching the Sea of Monsters.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I never watched that one.
I don't blame you. Neither did I. I walked out of the room. I will do anything for family, but I won't do that.
You're better than me. My cousin could have said, Benny, I love you, and I want to be you when I grow up. Let's watch Sea of Monsters, and I would have, roundhouse kick to the jaw of that problem.
So just say, that's not what I would do, and then throw it away.
And then
give him a cigarette.
Yeah, that's too. I'll be like, I quit smoking, but you can start smoking if you want.
Yeah. So I'm looking online, and they're making a third one. Unfortunately.
Wait, whoa! I thought those were rumors.
Coming out summer 2017. Oh! What the? It's a fan film. Never mind.
Oh, thank God!
It's included on the Wikipedia page for the series, but okay.
A fan film will do infinitely. A fan film will do infinitely better than that.
Look, my input is that if you're gonna do a fan film, just start over at the beginning again. Just reset the whole thing.
Hell yeah.
You don't need to worry about damaging the existing film series legacy or anything like that.
Because the thing that hurt was this franchise in particular had such potential. Yeah. And I've actually always been of the mindset that books like this should be adapted into something more along the lines of an episodic format.
Absolutely.
Because the main issue films are faced with is condensing so much. Wouldn't it be much more easier to take what is there and convert it into episodes or even shorts? That's when put together create this larger narrative.
Yeah, there's certainly a handful of stories out there that would be better suited for something like that, and this could very well be one of them. Yeah.
I've heard some people argue that Harry Potter would have been better off in that format.
Yeah.
You know what? It would have definitely been better off. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
No, it's good.
Watchmen. That I think just the way you said that. I've said this for a while. I've said giving Watchmen 12 episodes, with a budget of say 10 million each. A is already 70 million less than how much it cost, which was 190, and B is so much more flexibility because it was 12 issues. It was 1 year. It was 12 issues. You could have an episode per issue, and that gives both the writer and director, if they're not the same overall, that gives the writer and directors of all the episodes A more room to maneuver, and B gives them more time to actually think and pause and convey messages. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So it's like that's the sort of thing. Like since there was 5 books in the Percy Jackson series, you could have had basically like 1 season per book, and each season could have been 5 episodes or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Or even a episode for every 1 or 2 chapters.
Exactly. I mean, however
on the length.
Exactly. Like that's the beauty of the episodic deal. Is like you can spend as much time on each thing as you need to. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And that really it's a double-edged sword because it both gives you more room to maneuver, but also means you have to fill that room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
And also,
so it's sort of deal.
With that promise of add accuracy, the fans will be watching you like a hawk to see if you cut anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I mean, there's a limit there. If someone gets mad that you cut out the one back character who was doing nothing consequential, then they can take a hike.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys would want to talk about this at all, but one of the book series that I think is definitely suited towards a more episodic format, like a Netflix series or something like that, would be the series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket.
Oh, yeah. I read those books. Oh, go ahead.
I love those books.
And they, of course, are, I don't know if you guys have heard, but they've recently started doing a Netflix adaptation of it.
Yeah, I did hear.
I haven't had a chance to check them out yet.
Yeah, I've only watched a bit of the first episode.
What'd you think?
The thing is, I think before we talk about that, let's talk about the first film adaptation they did of the book and kind of like what was,
okay.
Like, you guys remember it, right?
The one with Jim Carrey.
Yeah. So just real quick, like, what did you guys feel was like good or bad about it? It
was definitely going for its own visual style. I was actually amused by the conflicting technology levels, like using record players, but you still have like alarms in your car. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was neat.
Yeah.
Also, like, just the environment itself felt very bleak and to fit the tone itself.
Mm-hmm.
And That's really all I can really say positively about it, seeing as I can't clearly remember any of the Baudelaire's performances, given that one of them was a baby. And as for Jim Carrey, well, I love him in Ace Ventura and The Mask, and so much more. What the hell is he doing in this film?
Exactly.
And I mean, if I may, I don't mean to throw it in there. There's two things that come to mind when I think of that film. The one thing I come to mind is I actually think this is weird. Don't get me wrong, but it may be the only film to be able to use cinema to display what it's like when you're trying to think of something. Because there's the kid who just reads all the books ever, and on top of that, right, it's the kid who reads all the books ever, right? And there's like 3 points in the movie where like he's trying to think of something that'll help them escape or something, and it just sort of cuts immediately to like a big shelf of books, and books start getting pulled out and put back in until the one that he needs comes into focus. I really dug that. I thought that was like just a really neat way to go about that. And so for that reason alone, the movie's cool with me. But B, I actually did kind of like Jim Carrey's take on Olaf. I actually kind of liked it. I thought it was a breath of fresh air into it. Because don't get me wrong, God, Olaf, fucking hate that guy. And I've always interpreted him as like a really sadistic, evil twat. So like, I'm not saying he should be Jim Carrey, but I kind of like the level of Jim Carrey's absurdity with it. There was like this, it almost made him even more scary. That on top of all like the just evil acts he's doing, he's also like insane. Whereas before he just sort of was.
There was actually one moment in the film that I did actually legitimately feel Carrey's take on the character, and that was when he was slowly drifting away from the third caretaker. I can't remember her name. Like,
the one who gets
eaten by the leeches. Like just slowly drifting away, just letting her hang on him for just a moment before letting her get eaten. Like I thought that was legitimately an intimidating scene, especially with how it was shot and performed.
Oh no, absolutely.
But
I mean, even as a kid, I was like, hold up.
But for me personally, Carrey just has way too much charisma to play a villain you're supposed to despise that much.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm with you. The Jim Carrey has too much livability in him. You could start taking a sledgehammer to, orphans' bank accounts and still, like, you'd be like, oh, that's my man.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing is that, while his performance was entertaining, it may not have been, it's probably not the best choice he should have gone with for, the direct adaptation of Count Olaf. And I kind of feel like one of the big downfalls of this new Netflix series that they're doing is they're casting...
Neil Patrick Harris.
That's right, Neil Patrick Harris, who's honestly a pretty funny guy. And he's, again, Count Olaf is supposed to be like a menacing, evil villain, and he's kind of played like a bit half and half, not where he's kind of like a diabolic villain in one scene, but kind of the semi-comic relief in another scene.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't the writer who let me snick it also writing the episodes?
Really?
Yeah, I do not know that. Let's find out.
That's why I could have sworn I heard that somewhere.
Google, save us.
Series of unfortunate events. Haha. Also, those films were depressing as shit. Why did I read them? Those books were depressing as shit. Yeah, like, why the hell did I... I mean, Lord knows I had enough going on in my mind. Daniel Handler is the real person.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, shit.
Because Lemmy Snicket is a fictional character within the world.
Yeah, no, he's always credited on the books as like the illustrator or whatever. But yeah, he's the writer. He's the Snicket.
Starring.
But yeah, I'm surprised. So he's writing this. So I wonder if it's his vision then that he's supposed to be a little of both.
Maybe.
I hadn't thought about that. Or maybe that's just the direction that he's been given by like the producers or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's also that too. I mean, Lord knows producers strong-arm people into stupid things.
I mean, the books are very depressing, so any element of levity would be appreciated, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I guess the problem I was getting is that I feel like, that first film already existed. I feel like with this series, this would be the time to try something different, a different approach.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of feel like it's just too much of the same of what was of the formula they were going for with the first film. They're just trying to refine it. I feel like that's a mistake. I feel like you should be trying to do something different this time.
Oh yeah, totally.
No, absolutely.
Always try to do something different from your predecessor, because, well, we already have the first film.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you 1,000%. I think it's always it's a difficult thing to hit, don't get me wrong, but showing that you're able to simultaneously keep it true to the source whilst making your own, like that in my opinion, that's kind of the defining feature, what makes a good adaptation. You know what I'm saying? When you take the original source material and keep it true, but also making it fresh, like that takes skill.
Oh yeah, staying true to the tone, the heart, and the themes of the original works are really important, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Oh no, absolutely.
You can go your own direction with it, but if you keep to those same themes and the same messages, then it's really still the original story at its core.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, absolutely.
But again, I just want to reiterate real quick. I do think
I
do think that this series is very well suited for this sort of like Netflix hour-long series, because the first film explored this a bit, but every film, there's not enough material in each book to make up for one film, and they had to combine all three, the first three stories, in order to have enough material for the first film. Whereas if you just take one at a time, it's definitely you could definitely get an hour's worth of material out of it.
Oh yeah, and that would especially suit certain stories in an animated format as well.
Yeah.
Before moving on to this one, which properties do you believe shouldn't be adapted into films? Because I have one that I think, though I don't know if I should really mention this, seeing as I've never actually read the book, to be honest.
The only one that comes to mind for me would be Redwall as a series.
I've never heard of them, but I'm open to hearing.
Same.
They're a fan. Oh, really? You haven't heard of them either? Okay.
Sounds to me I should.
It's a fantasy series for kids. It was written like in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's a fantasy series starring anthropomorphic animals. So like the main hero of the first several books is a mouse. The first one, it's a book named Matthias, and the sequel, it's his father. In the third one, it's Matthias' son. And it's got a variety of just woodland creatures in there. So like we got mice, we got badgers. The bad guys are like stoats, weasels, ferrets, that sort of thing. And while having animals definitely makes it feel a bit more lighthearted, it does like serious. It does go to be like serious. Try to be like a serious action story for kids. And so because of that, while it does present itself very seriously, and I'd compare it very much to being like a children's version of The Lord of the Rings, is how it is. And you said
child-friendly, anthropomorphic, and I just got flashbacks to Secret of NIMH.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could fairly compare it to that. But the thing is, with Redwall, I think there's a danger in how you want to do it. If you go CG, I think it's going to look very weird to as a story to tell, because in the books itself, it has a very tricky balance between being a lighthearted film with all these cute little animals, as well as being a serious story of these badass heroes. And I feel like it would be really hard for any director to properly translate that to, be it 2D animation, be it 3D animation. I feel like it's an incredibly complex tone to capture in a film. So yeah, that would be my pick.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I could see that definitely.
I don't know how good this would be, but like in terms of faithful, yeah, I'm going to send this one because I was thinking about the recent Disney movies, Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, because I mean the first one or the second one?
The live action ones.
Oh boy, Johnny Depp. Go on.
Because full disclosure, the first one was awesome, but it kind of from what I've seen of the book, and I haven't finished the book because, well, I just didn't have the time, even though it was a short book. Like it just seemed like very quick paced.
Well, I felt the first Alice in Wonderland, I felt that it was it was good. I felt that was a movie that was going to be as good as it was going to get. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
We're talking about
like
the live
that-
action one, not the animated one.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Oh.
that movie was as good as it was going to get. It's one of those moments where you just have to shrug and be like, well, that's all I'm getting.
Okay, the Mad Hatter is breakdancing now. I guess
Yeah.
because.
Yeah, I was like, well, shit, you know, you have Johnny Depp and you're paying him, you might as well have him do stupid shit. But let me put it this way. When I saw the trailer for the second one, I sort of paused and I said, well, this can either be really, really good or really, really bad.
I didn't even
When I
bother
saw-
seeing it.
When I saw the second trailer, I was like, so this is going to be really, really bad. So then I just stopped caring. And then when I stopped seeing the trailers in theaters, and then suddenly it just vanished, like with no publicity from the movie playtime showtimes, I knew I was right. That's all I have to say on the second one. Like I just sort of was like, well, that was destined for that. The hell was that orb she was running about in? What was that? Anyways, that's all I have to say on that one.
I just have a soft spot for the original animated film when I was a kid, like just because I rewatched that thing so many freaking times.
No, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm the same way. In fact, I was telling Dad this. I'm actually the same way with Night at the Museum. I love those things. And people, friends of mine, were basically like, wait, how could you love them? They're shit. And I'm like, I know, but they're so much fun. I love them. And I have a soft spot because, you know, when I was growing up, when I was like, you know, 9 through 12, like, yeah, I was like 10 when that, I was like 10 or 12 when that first came out. And like, it was amazing. Like, blew my mind. So, of course, looking back on it, it's terrible. But I still have a soft spot. So I totally understand what you're saying.
I mean, it's not trying to be like the most complex, you know, high art type of movie, but I think it was still fun. I liked it.
Oh, yeah.
Which one, the animated or the live action?
Oh, I thought we were talking about Night at the Museum.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I really like Night at the Museum.
Sorry about that.
Well, I'm also talking about the sequels, too.
Yes.
Like the third one, like that came out like 2 years
I don't
ago.
know.
I
Jack
never
about the
actually
third one.
saw the third one. I saw the second one, and I thought it was still more of the same.
Yep.
Enjoyable.
Oh, no, absolutely. Anyways, I'll shut up because I can go on about it.
Yeah, we have to talk about adaptations
Yes,
here,
sorry about that.
unfortunately.
I guess one question with adaptations, you know, is always, you know, it was always someone who made it before you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Actually, before we change gears, one thing I would like to talk on is actually from Alice in Wonderland, but from story to video game. Alice Madness Returns.
I see. Okay.
That game was what the movie should have been. The Burton movies, like, why the hell didn't we get that?
Yeah. I mean,
They
I've
were
never played the
different.
video game, but I know a lot about it. Like I watch friends play it. You know, I've seen plenty of stuff about it. Very cool game. Yeah.
There was quite a dark twist at one point in the games, but one of my favorite things about them is just the visual design. And just the voice they gave the Cheshire Cat. Like, the first time I saw my friend Dan playing the Madness Returns game, I saw the Cheshire Cat, like this malnourished, big-headed, toothy grin in cat. Like, just Alice tells the Cheshire Cat that she's quite on edge, and his only response is, very good. When you're not on edge, you're taking up too much space. Like, that voice, like, I just love that voice. I just love the art direction for that game and just, like, everything about it. Like, that was what I wanted in the movies.
No, I think you could certainly make the argument that the Tim Burton films, you know, while he always does, like, the edgy stuff, I feel like it definitely could have gone edgier, could have gone darker and, you know, more serious, you know? In some ways, it kind of felt like just another Tim Burton film in a way. You know, I'm not saying the film was bad, but it does kind of have like the similar visual feel to it that most of his work has.
It doesn't stand out amongst his other body of work.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It sort of melds into the background. You know, Tim Burton being quirky and odd visual style on a beloved classic. Okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Because it seemed like the perfect combination.
Yeah, seriously. It's like when I heard that, I was you know, thinking about potential with something like with American McGay's version of Alice.
Like when you hear Burton and Alice in Wonderland, you think, of course, naturally.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think I'm actually reminded what James Gunn said. Actually, I find his writings on Facebook to be really interesting. That's why I subscribe to him. He's got some cool thoughts. And remember, Ant-Man was supposed to be directed by Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright dropped out due to differences, and there's an outcry. And James Gunn wrote, he said, sometimes things you think would go together don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that stayed with me, because trust me, like, there's been films that I was like, wait, what? How is this bad? Or how is this weird? Like, it was someone I like. Sometimes things just won't go together.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's an important thing to keep in mind as films move on. A lot of directors and writers that we grew up with, they're still active. They didn't quit just because we got older. And so, like, it's always important to remember that part of it,
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes things just don't go together. Oil and water. Yeah, I'm just throwing that out there.
Oh, yeah. Also, there are a number of behind-the-scenes issues that we as the moviegoer are not in the know.
Sure.
Absolutely. Oh, no, that's also true.
Yeah, but I believe we're almost an hour into this, or just over an hour. Yeah. So let's quickly touch on what we feel are our favorite adaptations, seeing as we just spent most of this talking about what we feel makes a good adaptation or a faithful one. Lightning, would you like to start us off?
I was about to say I would not like to go first. I need to decide what my pick would be.
Okay. Bez, would you like to go, or shall I? Because I got a few in the chamber.
In the lovely words of the musical 1776, New York abstains courteously.
Okay, fair.
All right, I think I got one now. I think I got one if you want me to go.
Go ahead.
I think my pick would actually be V for Vendetta.
Oh.
Having both enjoyed the original comic and also the movie, I feel like they were faithful enough to the adaptation, but also changed it enough to fit the more modern landscape. You could certainly argue that they either changed it too much or that they changed it too little, but I liked what they made, and I feel like especially the way of the people that they put behind it to make the project come to life, like the director that they chose for it, the writers that they got on board to do it. I felt like it was a very mix to translate the story, not just copy the book straight out, or not just like take a little bit of it and do a very loose adaptation, just run away with it, but I feel like that was a great example of a time that you translated the material very well, changed it where it was necessary to in order to make it work in a film setting.
Oh yeah. That story actually when you're adapting something, you always have to be mindful that you're turning it into a film. It has to work in the film format, as opposed to turning a book and turning it as a book on film. You have to turn the book into a movie. Like, some directors just don't do that.
Like, I remember, Ben, what you were saying before with comics, where you have like an unlimited amount of paper. You can pace the story however the hell you want it to. And in V for Vendetta, I specifically remember there was several moments where the pacing of the story just would not work in a film. Like, it was quiet where there should have been action normally in a film, that sort of thing. And I feel like the movie did a good job of like trimming down what was necessary in that regard, and taking, like, there's some elements of the book, like they'll talk about one character's backstory like 2/3 but in the movie they take that out and they stick it in a different section that's more like 1/3 in order to make the pacing fit more to a movie. And that sort of changes, not just changing things, but moving them around to, I don't want to say correct the pacing, but adapt the pacing. Hell, let's go with that. Yeah.
That film had me the second they casted John Hurt.
Oh yeah, I know.
That film, I actually rewatched that lately. That is a really, I really enjoyed as it ramps up, like the last third. I really liked that. Oh, yeah. And I'll shut up.
My favorite adaptation, just going off the top of my head, I've been talking to my friends about this nonstop. If you're an anime fan, then you would know the lackluster anime adaptations that have been coming out lately. Ghost in the Shell doesn't look too good.
Oh boy, are we doing this? You want to do it now?
I haven't seen Ghost in the Shell yet. But my favorite adaptation as of late is actually the live-action Rurouni Kenshin movies.
Oh yeah, really? Yeah. I've seen a bunch of trailers for those. I've never watched them though.
Because first of all, let me just say they have recently been dubbed by Funimation, and not by the original cast of the anime, which I'm disappointed at, but the cast that they got was still fantastic.
Yeah.
And talking purely on the live action and actors and how they adapted the story, because keep in mind, I am a hardcore Rurouni Kenshin fan. This was my favorite anime growing up. It's the only series that I've read the entire manga of start to finish. I love these movies.
Mm-hmm.
They condensed the story in a way that made me appreciate. Okay, this is a little bit different, but I still like it. Okay, they introduced this character differently, but it fits to who this character is. And while certain characters didn't get as much exposure as I would have liked, they knew they had to focus on Kenshin. This is his story. He needs the most attention, and therefore we need to keep our sights focused on him. And just the way they reconstructed their own narrative based off the anime and manga, I was very happy with it, especially in certain areas where they tweaked certain characters to make them more enjoyable. Like the enemy in the first movie, Kanryu. In the anime and manga, he's just a businessman that's, oh, my money will protect me. In this film, he is so much more despicable, so much more fun. He's just bouncing off the screen with some energy in certain scenes, especially in the third act where he gets a Gatling gun and tries to shoot our heroes. And the fight scenes in this film are just phenomenal. They use very minimal wire work and stunt and actors, stunt performers. Most of the stunts are the actors.
Real
that's
quick,
cool. I like
think that's
that.
really cool. One thing you touched on is that the film was able to give more life to what was a very two-dimensional character before that. I think one of the other examples, the few examples I can think of that would be something like the adaptations of the Joker. Giving much more life to the character than what he was in the comics.
Yeah. Each adaptation brings something different, I feel.
Yeah, no, that's a good potential that an adaptation has. You don't see very often.
Oh yeah, especially with characters like, for example, Kanryu in the anime was very bland, very one note. If they had done something like that to one of the more beloved characters, that I feel would have been much more of a knee-jerk reaction. But someone as flexible in his character as the Joker, it's pretty okay to tackle that.
No, absolutely.
You don't see someone trying to reinvent Batman. He is this way, he has to act this way.
Mm-hmm.
People are very firm on how Batman should be portrayed.
I guess one thing I'd ask real quick about the Rurouni Kenshin films is, did you feel like they were consistently good over all three films, or was there a different level?
The first film was very good. I really liked it, but in adaptation-wise, they sort of deviated in towards the end of the second and into the third film. It was basically its own story with elements of the original, which I really liked, because while I knew this was going to be something a little bit different going in, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what was going to happen to characters I grew up loving in this new setting. Because I actually had the concern that my favorite characters would die, and I haven't felt that since I was a kid. And the way they restructured certain elements of the film, we got to see something really unique and something I haven't seen before. All four of our main fighter characters in the film ganging up on our main villain at the same time. Because in the anime, all four heroes all took turns fighting the villain Shishio. This time, you see Ayashi, Saito, Sanosuke, and Kenshin fight him at once, and Shishio is still able to fend off four attackers as if they were just nuisances. Which I was really okay, how the hell do they beat this guy? And this is as a fan who knows how Shishio is defeated. So while it deviated a little bit, it did so for the sake of building up some tension and getting the viewers much more invested in that they could see something new, as opposed to showing them something that deviated that would betray the heart of the series. Because I know that there's a tightrope when you have to walk, when you adapt something, because you want to stay faithful to it, but you also want to give the viewer something new, something engaging.
No, absolutely. With you 1,000%. So I guess if I may, I have one. It took some thinking, and because I mean, there's a ton of things I like. Don't get me wrong. I know people say, "Oh, you're always so negative," and I'm like, "But I like a lot of things." Actually, if I may throw something out, this isn't the adaptation that I found the best, but actually I think was the best received to someone who did love it, namely my dad, because Doctor Strange. Now you have to understand, my dad is 67 years old. He was in NYU during the peak of the Bay of the 60s new wave movement, and he started reading Doctor Strange at the age of 17, 18 in his first year of college from one of his roommates, and since then he's been in love with Doctor Strange his whole life, and that's about 50 years later. 50 years later, he is still dedicated to the Sorcerer Supreme, right? And he's been fiercely protective. I've seen, for example, when they were just whispering about Doctor Strange maybe in a film, Dad was the first person to go, "I need to see it to believe it." The director gets announced, the dad goes, "I don't know about his last movies." Dad is super protective. So when we went to see it, hopes were really high. Don't get me wrong, the trailers he loved, but still, there was still that hint of, "I'm not sure yet." We went to see the movie. Not only, I did not get a word out of him, but I got sound out of him. There was frequent incoherent babbling. And looking over and seeing him just having the time of his life, that's how I knew this was the perfect adaptation. Dad, for the next 4 hours, went on about how it was amazing and perfect. And don't get me wrong, so did I. I was in love and still am in love. But it was something I thought was unique in this case, that someone who had been following this character for like 5 decades was literally at one point drooling. I'm not going to ruin the film, but there's a certain point where he was just straight up drooling at it. I thought really showed testament to the film's strength. This guy has essentially followed the character for 50 years through innumerable artists and directors and writers and comics and films and TV and blah blah blah. And to see one film be able to translate, adapt 50 years of a character, right? And make it to appealing to what I would argue one of the most dedicated fans, because it's not like Doctor Strange was out a long time before he picked it up. I thought that really showed strength to its character, that it simultaneously understood its audience, but also understood its source material, and also understood the third factor, the all vital people coming in from the outside, like me. Like, don't get me wrong, I dug Doctor Strange before I saw the film. Like, I thought he was a cool character, but I never was like head deep in him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was never like forefront and center.
Oh yeah, I played Marvel's Ultimate Alliance, I never really played the character. That's the extent of my knowledge on him before this film.
No, absolutely. And aside from that, all I knew about Doctor Strange was that weird guy Dad wouldn't shut up about. That was basically it. So it was really, I took away that film. Dad said it was like the movie he'd been waiting like 40 years for. That was the first thing out of his mouth when we left the theater, because he hadn't spoke the whole time. He waited 40 years for that film. That's, I would say, probably a film that did the adaptation. One of the films that did it the best. I won't say there's a best one, because adaptation is subject to opinion, but that has definitely earned its place on the high level. Like that's the one I would say. Not for my sake, but for his.
By the way, I'm totally going to use that in the future when I critique films. Like, oh, is it good, but is it drool-worthy? That's the question.
Is it drool-worthy?
On a scale of 1 to drool.
At a scale of 1 to drool, and I wasn't casting stones. I've been in the theater before drooling. The first Guardians of the Galaxy trailer back in 2014, I may have had to change seats. I was just drooling so much. I was like, "You're telling me Andy Dwyer is flying through space? What?"
So, what would you guys say is your least favorite adaptation? And if you guys need a moment to talk about this, I got something in the chamber to stall for time.
I can go if no one wants to. All right.
Abbas.
All right. So, the Aragon film.
Oh!
As an older grown man, I can look back at the Aragon book and realize, it's got its problems. It's not as amazing as I thought it was when I was a kid, but it's like, going into that movie, I knew it very well. I loved it very much. I had very high expectations for it, and it fell flat in like every single regard to me. Like, just thinking back to it, it changed the story immensely to make it into a one-shot film. There's things that happen in the story that set it up for what happens in the sequels, in the second and third and fourth books. And they changed those things in the story in such a drastic way that there's no way. Like, I knew halfway through the film, there's no way they can make the fucking sequel to this. Because they've just completely shot themselves in the foot. Like, they were going through a rainforest when they were supposed to be going through a desert in the book. Just as one example, they cut
you things. Get more difference.
Yeah, definitely. They cut things out to be sure, but they were sizable events in the books, like really big fights that meant something for the character, and also were noticeable for introducing new characters. For example, so the main character Aragon and Brom, they're traveling to this one town. There's a huge fight. They both get knocked out, and they wake up, and this guy Murtagh is taking care of them. Instead, this fight that happens where they both get knocked out is very much just scrapped, and instead, Murtagh just shows up, and he's there. It feels very, very strange. Add on to this, they also... I'm not crazy with the visual design that they changed for a lot of the things in the later stage of the film. Like in the later stages, they go to this huge dwarven city. There's all these jewels and everything. It's very much downsized in the film. Like you really don't see much of it.
I think I heard about this dwarven city. Like I didn't really read the books, but one of my friends in high school or college who did read the books said like there was this dwarven city that was built inside of a mountain because the mountain itself was so big it stretched all the way up to like the stratosphere or some shit.
And there was a huge fucking pink gem that expands in the mouth of this cavern, and it becomes their ceiling. And this huge gem is like the length of a fucking football field. It's enormous. Nowhere in the film, dude.
That would have been awesome to show.
If they showed it, it was one quick shot, and I don't remember it.
That's the sort of gem I want in my life. Yeah. That is the sort of thing I'd like to show to someone. They say, "What did you accomplish in your life?" I would just point to the gem the size of a football field. Go, dude.
One of the other critical moments of the story is when at the very end, the Saphira, Aragon's dragon, the dragon pierces through the fucking gem and shatters the whole thing to dive bomb through the fucking ceiling down onto the table below and kill the main villain and stab him through the head. And because of the lack of the big ass gem, you don't have that scene. You don't have that really cool fucking imagery from the book.
I'm just imagining how it would look.
That sounds awesome. That sounds like fucking fire.
It was. As a kid, I was reading that just like, holy shit, this is awesome, you know?
I barely remember Aragon, but that image of, a dragon basically going through solid gem just to stab this guy. Yo, that's my kind of guy.
Max Payne bullet time shit now.
No, that would be so cool.
Could have been great.
Yeah, could have, but then the Fire Nation attacked.
Let's not touch that shit. Oh God.
Right. I don't have enough. I don't have enough sanitizing.
Yeah, yeah, we don't want this episode to go too long.
Say, how much salt do we have left in the tank?
Right. I'm endless. If I get upset enough, I'm endless.
Oh, you and me both. But I'm trying to keep these things timely.
Yeah. Fair enough.
For me, and let me know if I'm cheating here, because I very well might be.
Go on.
Rurouni Kenshin Reflections.
Which film is that?
Now, the 3 live-action films are good. The anime is great up until Season 3, where it's just filler, and even then it can be enjoyable. The manga, great from start to finish. But because the anime ended at a certain point, we never learned the origins of Kenshin's scar. So they made 2 OVAs, unreleased animated films, that explained the origin of the scar, showing Kenshin's time when he was a soldier in the war. Now, those 2 films, Trust and Betrayals, did very well, so they made a 3rd one that was intended to get new audiences back into the series. So its mission was to recap the entirety of the series, which the anime, not touching the third and final act of the manga, ran 95 episodes, and some of those are filler. But still, that's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
And it also decided to tell its own story next to this recap. And it hurts me. Watching this makes me visibly sick. Now, the main thing I say about adaptations is to keep to the themes and the spirit of it. The main theme of Rurouni Kenshin is you cannot find redemption in death. You have to work for it and earn it and live with the consequences of your actions. At the end of the film, Kenshin dies from some bullshit disease that even the writers don't know what they gave him. That I'm not making that shit up. And Kaoru, his wife, pushes back his hair to show that his scar has faded. In death, he has redeemed himself. That shit pissed me off to so many levels. Also, to recap the events of the story, they decide to show the events through Kaoru's perspective. Keep in mind, Kaoru was not present for all the major events of the series. And to recap certain scenes, they use stylized cuts and edits that would confuse someone more than actually inform them. For example, Kaoru's in her house, then she turns around, and there's a dead man in a carriage in her living room. That's supposed to inform the viewer that shit went down after this person was assassinated. But what it looks like is Kaoru's hiding a body in her house. Also, the animation style of this, it goes for a much more realistic tone, and as a result, the eyes look like they're trying to steal my soul. And there are several characters who just don't act like their characters. Like Yahiko, who was this young punk kid in the show who was aiming to one day be like Kenshin, grew up to be this wise, he's a philosopher, when really we see what he looks like when he grows up in the manga. He's still a bit of a rebel, but he has a code of honor. Kaoru, she's much more of a passive woman in this film, whereas before she had a lot of fire and spunk to her. This entire thing just pissed me the fuck off, and worse, in my opinion, it implies that Kenshin never once smiled sincerely, like he was always lying to everyone to make them think he was okay, when I like to think that he was happy with these people.
Yeah.
That's too.
No, I hear you absolutely.
Yeah, it was so bad. The creator, Nobuhiro Watsuki, and keep in mind, most manga writers and such tend to be very quiet when they're displeased with something because they're Japanese. They want to stay polite. When this thing was released, his words were, Kenshin went through too much shit to die like that. And disowned it as non-canon.
Nice. I respect that. I genuinely respect that.
Because they told him they were going to make his little continuation, and he was like, okay, let me see a script. He saw one draft and never saw anything else. And then he saw the finished product, and he was like, what the fuck?
I respect that. You know, that is I wish more artists would take that stand. Like, you know what? No. I respect that. I guess if I may, I don't mean to cut you off. Am I?
I'm just going to end with, if that is cheating, audience, well then, Last Airbender. That's all I have to say.
Dude, if this was a bingo card, that's the free square, you know? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I agree. I like that description of Avatar. In the list of shitty movie bingo, Avatar: Last Airbender is the bingo, like the space in the middle. That I want that. That needs to be like law. I want that to be inscribed.
Ogden's Law.
Ogden's Law. I guess if I may, I have a rather odd choice. If it's cool, does it have to be filmed? Because I have an idea for something else.
It doesn't have to be filmed. Just something you feel is a horrible adaptation of something you hold precious.
All right, in that case, it's kind of weird. Hear me out.
Go ahead.
But Fallout. Fallout 3, to me personally. Now, I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people, but I don't care. Let me put it this way. I'm one of the few people, at least nowadays, who played the original Fallouts, like the 1, 2, and Tactics, right? Way back in the late 90s on PC, the isometric turn-based. And so when I heard that Fallout 3 was going to be first and third person, my first response was, thank you, Lord Jesus. And then as more promo clips came out, like I was getting more and more excited. I was like, yes, Fallout is back. Because now, mind you, no one considers Fallout Brotherhood of Steel anything. So that doesn't even count. I was like, this is the first Fallout game like in 9 years. This is going to be amazing. I love it. And then I got it and I almost vomited. Because again, this is why I like discussing game ideas and design, because there's a different way to look at game narrative than there is film narrative, right? And it's like Fallout 3, gameplay wise, was fine. It was fun. I have nothing to complain about there besides the bugs. It's the story that was so atrocious that made me want to vomit. It was the worst adaptation of Fallout there could have been. Because it literally was the East Coast adapting the West Coast, both in terms of story and studio. Bethesda was just adapting what Black Isle had done. And Bethesda put so many of their own spin and ideas, not only in the gameplay, but in the story as well. So much of the, just backbone, what I do in backbone lore is like big events like bombs dropping or the Brotherhood of Steel, etc. So much of the backbone lore was just cannibalized.
Can you give some examples of
for
that?
No reason. Well, for example, they say it's 2277, right, in the game? Mm-hmm. The bombs fell, right, in 2077. So they say it's 200 years, right? Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for that. But at one point, someone brings up the fact that there's like no vegetation anywhere. And the hand-off excuse is, oh, well, we got hit hard. And the reason that pisses me off, right, is because in Fallout 1, LA, which was hit like mad, like real mad, to the point it was almost called the Glow at one point, or that might be a different city. The point was it was hit heavy. By the first game in Fallout 2161, less than 100 years later, it's already repopulating. By 2241, right, this Fallout 2, the whole point of that game, right, was almost political corruption. Like that was basically the point of it. And the rest of society has basically rebuilt itself to the point there can be political corruption, right? Mm-hmm. So all of that happened under 200 years. So Fallout 3, it's just magically 200 years later, but everything looks like it's a mere 40 years after the war. And so for me, that's why I'm like, if they said, hey, this is like, I don't know, 2120 or something, like some real early time, like, okay, Godspeed. Like, I'm so down for that. But saying it's 200 years and then giving me the half-assed excuse that we just got hit with a lot of nukes, that doesn't fly. That's such a cop-out. They just wanted to do that for the reason they could include the Brotherhood of Steel and for the reason they could include the Enclave. And the Enclave also bullshit because at the end of Fallout 2, spoiler warning, you blow up an oil rig. And on that oil rig is the Enclave, and you literally kill the Enclave. And that's it. That's the whole point. Like, that's one of the most badass points in the game. And I'm supposed to believe, that the Enclave, not only did they survive, not only do they have all these forces and vertibirds and whatnot, on top of that, I'm supposed to believe they trekked 3,000 miles? Not to mention the Brotherhood of Steel trekking 3,000 miles. Like, I'm just supposed to believe this? So then, like, the insults just keep piling up. The Brotherhood of Steel in the first two games, right? They were always portrayed kind of as assholes. They were always a rather ambiguous gray group. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're never good, they're never bad. So in Fallout 3, having them come in as like the literal, not proverbial, but literal knights in shining armor, it essentially was killing one of the best parts of Fallout, which was that even the most well-armed group that does good things are still kind of assholes. All of a sudden, there's the knights in shining armor. And I know they made a point of saying how the other Brotherhood doesn't like that, but that's a cop-out excuse. There is nowhere near enough gameplay or story in that aspect of it to give it any credit. And it's essentially like, it got to the point that if New Vegas hadn't come out, I would have just thrown Fallout away. Because in Fallout 4, which I liked, I mean, the thing about Fallout 4 is it's a good game, it's just kind of shit, is the Brotherhood of Steel has gone back to being ambiguous assholes. That pisses me off. It's only been 10 years. That does not happen. And it's like there's just more and more things Bethesda does that tacks up that makes me realize like this is not a good adaptation. They're essentially like jacking something, going mine.
Yeah. No, it
And,
sounds
like,
very much like
I
they're just like
wouldn't.
ignoring what was done in the previous games.
Oh no, they are, and like I would give them credit. Like I would give them points just to admit that's what they're doing. If they just said, "Yeah, fuck it, all this isn't canon anymore," I'd be like, you know what, fucking hate you guys, but at least you had the balls to admit it. At least you had the balls to say you're doing your own thing. But that's why everyone still wants New Vegas too. New Vegas was made by the guys who made 1, 2, and Tactics, and New Vegas actually like picked up and tied up loose threads from back then and sort of basically retconned Fallout 3. Like the way I put it is Fallout 3 was Fallout rebooted. Fallout New Vegas was the Fallout 3 we need. And it's like it's just such a lack of appreciation, which is to me weird because Bethesda's always had such a nice touch, with Elder Scrolls, like having this real deep immersive world and a real respect for their lore. So I just kind of got blindsided by that. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know much about the first Elder Scroll games, but I wonder if it's because that was their story and because they were taking over someone else's story. They're just not as respectful.
No, absolutely. Like I mean, I think you're completely right. I just thought they would be more respectful.
They were asked to do a Game of Thrones Song of Fire and Ice game, but they declined to actually do Skyrim since I think they'd be more interested in doing their own story as opposed to telling someone else's.
No, absolutely.
Because it would give you more freedom, I imagine.
No, absolutely. And it's like
that's part of the reason the developers of Sly Cooper made Infamous, because they could create their own comic book-esque IP and not be worried about sticking to someone else's vision.
No, Storm, they made it because they hate me and they don't want to make any more Sly Cooper games just to spite me. That's why.
I know, right? Sly 4 was good, but we need Sucker Punch back.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yes.
I
too have strong feelings.
Yes. I do agree with what you're saying that and this is one thing I really hadn't thought of until you mentioned it, but the sort of gameplay, the style of game that Fallout 1 and 2 were, you really have not seen that represented or translated very well in any of the future games. It's very been much like lost to the past. And that's really sad.
Yeah, and it's really sad. And here's the thing, right? And don't get me wrong, it's really sad, but I see why they did it. Because here's the thing about Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics I tell people. If you can beat the game, God bless you. It is one of the most well-written, well-atmospheric, and one of the most deeply, narrative-focused games I've ever played, to the point that, like, a decade and a half later, almost two decades at this point. Yeah, Fallout, the original one was 97. Yeah, so 20 years since then. Holy shit. I still recommend it. It's almost unbearable to play. It is so slow. It is so crazy. You could walk over a rock and then 20 hours later you're screwed because that rock was Jesus or something. It's the sort of game you have to go in understanding you're not going to win. It's a really hard game to beat. So when they ditched that, like it was sad because isometric 2D has been done before. It was sad to see that thrown aside, but not so much for Fallout. That I was cheering. That I was like, fuck yes. Because that way more people can enjoy the story.
Play like you're not going to win. Just me playing XCOM.
No. You never win. You just do a little better each time.
Basically, yeah. No, absolutely. And, no, and I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still good isometric games. For example, Neverwinter Nights, which also the people at Fallout worked on. No, that is one of my favorite games, and it's isometric 2D. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I think Fallout was the best story without the best gameplay. And I think the gameplay came true in New Vegas. That's when the gameplay was peaked. But then again, I'll shut up because I can go on about New Vegas all day.
So to close this out, because ending on a negative note would be sad, what adaptations would you guys like to see or are looking forward to?
Ooh. Come back to me. I want to see if I have a better answer than New Aragon.
I would have said Power Rangers, but damn, they hit the nail on the head the first try.
I still haven't gotten to see it yet, but I've heard nothing but good things.
It's actually enjoyable. I would have said that as my favorite adaptation, had Rurouni Kenshin not been as good as it was. Corny where it needed to be, serious where it needed to be. But an adaptation that I'm looking forward to or would like to see, I'm hoping Sly Cooper is good. I don't know if they're still making the Sly Cooper movie since Ratchet and Clank didn't perform as well as they were hoping. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they expected, to be honest. Like, you make a movie about Ratchet and Clank, what the fuck did you expect?
Like, I heard them saying that they want to retell the first game, which, in my opinion, may not be a wise move.
Yeah.
It's like the strongest element I feel is the story engine of this world. Sly Cooper is a master thief. Okay, what heists can we see him on? Go.
Yeah, there's lots of potential there, you know? It feels like kind of a waste to just spend the time retelling the existing story.
Yeah, have Sly and the Sly Cooper movie pick up with the fourth game left off. Right. Fix that.
And just real quick, I feel like that's kind of where the Ratchet and Clank movie failed, is that they were just trying to retread old ground. And they weren't...
It basically was...
We have a game, like, the main problem with adapting a video game is the fun from a game is playing it. You are the one in control. So exactly. You have to find... Like, very few video games can translate well into film.
Absolutely.
Like, did anyone here see the Doom adaptation?
No.
I saw the poster, and that's all I needed to see.
Good. You guys aren't missing anything.
Right. Thanks. Even The Rock can't solve anything. Everything, my bad. The Rock can solve many things. He is The Rock. If I may, I have one.
Yeah.
And this is kind of weird, but I'd like to see an Archer video game. I'd like to see an Archer video game made by Telltale. You know, the guys who did Homestar Runner and The Walking Dead.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I think having an Archer video game in the style of that Homestar Runner one, where all you do is point and click and they comment on things, I think if done well, would be amazing, because the Homestar Runner one was so good because not only did they have the original voices, but it was the original guys too. They wrote the whole thing, and they helped Telltale, you know, integrate it into the gameplay. And I think having Archer walking around the office, you know, and you can have him click on Pam, and like they could have that interaction. It'd be like, Pam, are you smoking a joint? And Pam could say no as she continues to smoke a joint.
I suddenly got flashbacks to the South Park video game.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah, almost like that. Like yeah, sort of like that. Like, you know, a game that's all about, you know, it's basically for the people who love the show. You know what I'm saying? Like, and full of inside references and jokes and the characters being funny and breaking the fourth wall. You know, but written and crafted by the people who made the show. So it's not people just ripping on it. It's not people copying. It's the actual people doing it. And I would love to see Archer that. I would love to see a puzzle game and have, like, you know, Archer screaming at Lana and Pam while he's trying to defuse a bomb or some shit.
That's a good combination.
I would. Yeah, and it'd be great to have like a conversation feature. You know, like, you know, Archer. Hey, Archer, how was your day? And, you know, option A, it was good. Option B, it was good. Option C, suplex yelling Burt Reynolds or something. You know, you've you know, your inventory can be the same thing. You know, you've acquired a doll, and Archer can comment on that, going, "Oh, geez, a doll, great. What am I gonna do? Bribe Chucky, or something?"
And you can.
So, exactly. Like, I mean, that's what I'm not crossing my fingers because I don't think that would ever happen due to just logistics. But that's the sort of thing I'd like to see. I like it when people from a different medium come over to another one and like make something in that medium with the respect it deserves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what I'd like. I'll shut up because otherwise I have talked in Archer quotes before. That is a communication in itself.
I think my choice, I do have a better one now, is there is a fantasy series of books called The Kingkiller Chronicle, but it's largely known by the first one, which is called The Name of the Wind. I
think I've heard about this, actually.
It's a very good film series that's come out in recent years. Like, let me just check real quick. I want to say it's like in the last 5 or 6 years it came out. Name of the Wind. Yes. 2007 is when this first one came out. So about 10 years old now. And just the first two are out now. It's going to be a trilogy. The author's working on the third one right now. It's very, very good, and I feel like it has the potential to be the next big fantasy adaptation, something akin to like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. You know, I feel like there's a lot of potential there for this to be the next thing. It's a very well-written book. I'm sure anyone who's read it would definitely agree with that. It's become very well-respected, and...
Okay, I just Googled the Name of the Wind, and I finally figured out why I remember that name of the Kingkiller Chronicles. What? The author cameoed on a D&D stream I watched, Critical Role.
Yeah, no, dude, he's been doing a lot of D&D stuff. Like, he plays with the Penny Arcade guys doing Acquisitions Inc. and shit.
Yeah, I just like, oh, he played a paladin on Critical Role next to Travis Willingham, who's like this huge ass
Oh,
barbarian.
dude, I want to see him play with Travis Willingham. Holy shit. The thing that I think is the biggest challenge with adapting that series, the 2 books, and eventually the 3rd book, is that the first one adapts pretty well to film. You know, not too much that needs to be meddled with in order to make that happen. But I think the second one, the sequel, not Doors of Stone. What am I thinking? I can't remember what the second one's called. Give me a sec. Wise Man's Fear. That's what the second one's called. And I feel like that one, the sequel, the Wise Man's Fear, is going to be very tricky to adapt to film because of the pacing. It's very much like one of those books like we talked about where it had a lot of pages to work with, and so it can very much go at its own pace. Like, I almost feel like the first one is better suited for film, but the second one, that might be better suited for like a Netflix series of like hour-long episodes.
Like say a movie springboards the franchise, and the second book is released in episodic format.
Yeah, something like that.
And like kind of like what Limitless tried to do, where it had the film first and then had this TV show, but that only lasts one season.
Yep. But yeah, I'd agree. Something like that might be the best fit for this. And I can't say much for the 3rd book because, you know, it's not out yet. But yeah, I feel like that's the sort of direction they would need to take to do this series. But, you know, if done well, it could be incredible.
They actually did take a jab at him for his refusal to release the 3rd book.
Yeah, he's been slow as hell with that, man. It's been nuts.
They took a jab at him like a few times.
Yeah, I'm glad they do. The Wise Man's Fear, the second one, came out in 2011. So it's been 7 years now. We've been waiting on the 3rd one.
Nice. But hey, I guess sometimes people have to wait for stuff. You know, people have apparently been going nuts over Game of Thrones for taking forever.
Yeah. No, he's very much like that right now.
The funny thing is, for me, I don't even read Game of Thrones, so people will vent to me going, I have to wait. And I'm like, well, I can't sympathize because I don't read it.
No, I've specifically not wanted to start it because I knew I'm going to get to that point just like them, you know?
Yeah. No,
that's why I did. That's why I didn't want to start Firefly, because then I knew I'd be at that point where I finish the series and I'm heartbroken because there isn't more than 14 episodes.
You can't go into it knowing you're gonna be set up for disappointment at the very end. You know, it's so hard.
Absolutely.
But then you see the movie.
It's like when I Google an actor in The Walking Dead because I like them, and then they already tell me that they already died, and I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah. And I just get sad. I'm like, aw. But anyways.
Well, in the words of Bez's father, sometimes it's very much worth the wait. So, thank you all for joining me today.
Worth the wait and drool-worthy.
Yeah, drool-worthy. Thank you all for joining me on this episode. I had a lot of fun. Hope you guys did too.
Yes. Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
I'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace.
Hey guys, Storm here. Hope you liked this episode of Fandemonium. If you did, then consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out. If you have an idea for a topic you want to see on the next Fandemonium, then leave a comment down below. We would love to hear what you guys want to see next. That's it for now. Till next time.